Guess how much these are going for on the Aussie used market right now? Everything just feels so bloody solid.
Now, these were renowned for their reliability back in the day, with no real significant weaknesses back in the day, but now they are old.
I'll go as far as saying it feels like driving a really well-sorted European car. Now, before we continue, we have some very exciting news. You've been asking for it for ages. We're finally doing it. We're hosting our first ever Cars and Coffee. It's going to be on Sunday, December 7th at Shannon's in Artarmon in Sydney. It is completely free and open to the public. It kicks off from around about 8 o'clock, wraps up around about 11 o'clock. We're so excited. We already have some phenomenal cars lined up. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, and also later that night, also at Shannon's in Artarmon, we're having our first ever live ticketed event. Yep. It's Adam and I, and also our good mate and automotive expert, John Cadogan.
Yeah, think of it as a bit of a live podcast kind of thing. We're going to be talking new cars, used cars, behind the scenes, stories about both channels. Going to have a whole Q&A section so we can answer all of your questions. Tickets are on sale now, but they are selling fast and they are very limited. So to get your ticket, hit the link below. Okay, the Mitsubishi 380 might just be one of the best used car bargains to buy right now. When they came out in 2005, Mitsubishi basically took the platform of the 9th generation Galant and spent over $600 million developing and honing the 380 to be a truly brilliant car. But no one bought them, and that actually killed off Mitsubishi manufacturing cars in Australia. And it's almost like we all forgot they existed, which is also possibly why they're now so cheap on the used market. But are these massively underrated, or has age taken its toll and they're now best avoided? We're going to take you through everything you need to know about these, show you what goes wrong with them, and work out if you should buy one or not. And that means starting with some bad news first. And like so many Aussie-made cars of this era, the clear coat and paint can fade, even if they're well cared for. Now, a lot of this was due to manufacturers at the time having to use more environmentally friendly processes when it came to painting them. Although, then you find examples like this where the paint is honestly pretty much perfect. Also, according to the owners, white 380s are far more resilient to this sort of clear coat and paint wear and tear issue, even with just minor TLC. But the fallout from these environmentally friendly processes don't end there. No matter which iteration or update of 380 you're looking at, the headliner sagging, that's a well-documented issue. And the same can be said for all the trim specs, but especially for the higher-end GT, VRX, and even the limited edition TMR, the glue that holds the trim on the door cards, it's sort of losing its adhesion by now. Also, you want to know how limited the TMR 380 was? Only 20 were made. And while the rest of the 380 range came packing a naturally aspirated 3.8 litre V6, the TMR bolted a supercharger to the thing, increasing power by over 30%. It also came with the full suite of supporting modifications, but like the rest of the 380 range, power was sent purely to the front wheels, so don't go expecting to power slide a 380 out of a corner anytime soon. But if you're thinking that having a whacking great V6 over the front wheels sending all the power forward is going to result in these things just understeering and torque steering like a pig all over the place, well, you might be surprised. So power down and no torque steer at all. Apparently the TMR is exactly the same. And also, I know we're all mourning the loss of a naturally aspirated V8, but can we also spare a thought for a V6? Because this engine is just so silky smooth. And also, look, I know it's not a performance car as such, but I'm going to sound like a bit of a car journo wanker saying this. It's a really enjoyable engine to actually use, like overtaking, pulling into traffic. Anytime you get the chance to give it some revs, it's just enjoyable. And fun fact for you, aside from the TMR 380, the base spec ES with a manual transmission was the fastest of the lot. Although the fuel consumption can be quite alarming. Quite a few owners have complained that their fuel consumption around town hovers between 12 and 15 litres per 100 Ks. Out on the freeway, it can drop down to about 8 litres per 100 Ks, hopefully. Speaking of being hopeful, you're going to want to have a, let's say, an optimistic frame of mind, or at least the dexterity of the T1000 from Terminator 2 to get your hand down here to change the front headlight globes, because it can be a shit of a job. The parts are cheap and easy to access, but actually getting in there to do them, nightmare. Luckily, fixing the window regulators and the door actuators is a damn sight easier, plus the parts are cheap and easy to get. Actually, just on the parts, owners have complained that some of the 380 specific parts are getting harder and harder to find. Mitsubishi only sold about 30,000 of these. To put that into perspective, the Magna that this car replaced sold more than twice that. And yeah, you can sort of Frankenstein some Magna and other Mitsubishi parts to suit a 380, but when it comes to the 380 specific parts, yeah, they can be a real bloody challenge. For example, the latch on the center console lid, if you breathe incorrectly or sneeze, it'll break like it has in this one. Actually, a lot of the plastics in here can become quite brittle. And also this next one, it's not common as such, but it can happen, as in this car. The dashboards can sort of warp out of shape a little bit. But just fixing these things can be more challenging than you're possibly anticipating. Also, the exterior plastics can get pretty brittle as well, like the housing that holds the glass for the mirror in, that can happen. And really anything made of plastic or rubber you need to check out, even for safety things like windscreen wiper blades, chances are they've had the sword by now. Look, wiper blades, they simply need to be good, and that's why we use Wipertech blades, because they're simply some of the best blades in the business, and they could save you a small fortune over what some of the OEMs charge. Plus, you can get yourself 15% off and free express shipping by getting yourself a set via the link down below. Do it, they're bloody awesome. Although you'll get them completely for free if you do what Tom has done with his 380 and lend us your car to feature. If you'd like to volunteer your car, email me, the link's down below. But look, when it comes to accessing some of the really hard to get parts, luckily the community around these cars, like the forums and the owners groups, are absolutely fantastic, super, super supportive. Just be aware that these things don't have anywhere near the same sort of aftermarket support that you might find in a Commodore or a Falcon. Although, according to the owners of these that have also owned Commodores and Falcons and a host of other family cars in this sector, apparently the 380 has less of an appetite for consumables like brakes and tyres. And that might be helped by the fact that the 380 has easily one of the worst turning circles in all of the world of automotive. You can't just quickly do a UE or pull into a tight park somewhere and put, dynamic pressure on your tyres through your amazing driving skill. Instead, you've got to do like an Austin Powers 40-point turn. Honestly, I know freight trains that have a tighter turning circle than one of these. In fact, you might get so frustrated that you're just going to drive over or through anything that's in your way. Actually, you know what? On that, check the entire car for any signs of accident damage or dodgy repair work. We're going to get into what these cost soon, but let's just say quite a few owners might be on a very tight budget. Sometimes that can mean no comprehensive insurance, and sometimes that can mean repair work being done on the cheap. You don't want to buy a previously crashed 380, trust me. Also, plenty of these were sold to government and fleet operations and were sold as rental cars. And if you've ever seen how my mates and I have treated rental cars, you don't want to buy a car that has previously been an Avis or a Hertz or a Europe car employee. Don't do it. Not worth the hassle down the track. Now, what do we all think of the looks here? I know, in standard bottom of the range form, it doesn't exactly get the blood racing, does it? Once you go higher up the food chain, they do become a bit more visually appealing. The TMR 380, that's a cool looking thing. But maybe approach it in the same way that we discussed the Magna we featured recently. Think of a 380 as a blank canvas for you to express yourself all over. Because these things, lowered just a little bit on some sexy aftermarket wheels, they can look really cool. See? Another positive, these seats. It's funny, when we were researching through the owners groups, we found so many compliments about how wonderful these seats are. They're just the right amount of supportive, but then also kind of almost lounge chair-esque to sit in. One owner actually mentioned that he thinks IKEA could learn a few things or two about the comfort of lounge chairs from the 380 seats. In this particular car, look, it's pushing over 240,000 Ks. I think it's had a hell of a life. And the seats, maybe they're not wearing quite as well as they are in other 380s, but they are still comfortable, even though they're sort of, they may have seen slightly better days. Also, the overall fit and finish and just sense of quality in here is so much better than what you'll find in Commodores and Falcons and possibly even the Toyota Orion of this time. Like, everything just feels so bloody solid. And look, the materials in this one, this is a base spec, so there's nothing too fancy going on. But when you get into like a GT or a VRX, one of the higher spec ones, the actual materials used feel quite premium, especially for what these cost. And then the design, it's so nice and simple, and it's really easy to use everything. And actually, I don't sound weird saying this, but enjoyable to use. Like all the buttons and the switch gear, it just feels solid, like it's going to last forever. And according to owners that have owned not just a 380, but a bunch of cars in this segment, interior resilience in this is arguably the best, even in this car, as I said, over 240,000 Ks, but it's wearing quite well. Okay, you've got a bit of paint missing on the door handles and on the gear selector there, but you know, this thing's had a hell of a life, but it's still holding together really, really nicely. And also, while the higher trim spec models do feel far more fancy than this, I've got to admit, like a Mazda 6 or a Honda Accord Euro, they definitely have, let's say, more of a sense of premium car over a 380, but in saying that, they're going to be asking thousands of dollars more on the used market. Plus, these just feel much larger inside than they do as well. And then as far as spaces for all your crap, not too bad. You've got okay sized glove box there. Yep, you've got a spot down here for your phone, just there. You've got 2 cup holders here, but there's no little grippy things to hold small pretentious coffees down there. It's a bit annoying, so it's no good for me. Under the broken lid here, you've got another cubby hole. I feel like there was a period of time when manufacturers just assumed that the only thing you'd want to put in a door is like a couple of envelopes. This was that period. These door bins are not big enough to hold any kind of water receptacle at all. There's no storage under here. There's nothing under the seats. Has a sunglasses holder. There's also a coin tray. Coins they're like currency. We don't really use them anymore, but they go there. And this section here, that is specifically designed to collect dust and filth. Now, typical for Mitsubishi, these things were absolutely loaded with kit when brand new. When it comes to bells and whistles, you're probably going to get more stuff in a 380 than you will in the equivalent competition cars. Even the fleet models came with remote central locking, cruise control, climate control, and a trip computer and a powered driver's seat. And safety-wise, there'll be dual front and side airbags, anti-lock brakes, and electronic brake force distribution, although no stability control, no matter which model. However, as is to be expected, the standard infotainment system is neither informative or entertaining. These things are like archaic these days. There's no Bluetooth connectivity. There's no kind of Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Actually, the iPhone hadn't even been invented when these things were in production. But good news, retrofitting all of this stuff to the latest tech is an absolute breeze, as is updating the speakers for better sound quality. Actually, we teamed up with our mates at Automotive Superstore to make sort of a guide video to updating your infotainment system and speakers and whatnot. The link to that video is down below. Check it out. Actually, with Automotive Superstore as well, check them out for everything from engine parts to car care to dash cams to even suspension parts. Chances are, whatever you need for your car, they'll have it. Actually, speaking of suspension, the front sway bar bushes wearing out and rattling, especially over rough surfaces, yeah, that's a really common thing, but replacing them is super easy. Actually, just upgrading the car suspension in general, that can make a massive difference to how these drive. Now in the back seat, I'm exactly 7.47% of the height of the Airbus A380. This is in my driving position, and oh my God, this is so comfortable. This doesn't feel like the back seat of a car. This feels like a lounge chair. I wish I could show you how comfy it is. Just find one of these and sit in the back. Plus, look at the amount of foot and leg room I've got. It feels so spacious in here. I can't get over how comfy this is. As far as features and practicality go, a couple of air vents, got some very stylish kind of gathered leather pockets on the backs of the seats. It's got the spot here, that's just going to collect all sorts of dust and crap. You've got a pull down armrest with another couple of cup holders. Again, no little fingery bits to hold small pretentious coffees. That's a pain. Another thing that can be annoying, these things are renowned for having the backs of the tops of the seats just degrading over time. In the leatherline models, it can just sort of crack and fall apart. And then as far as practicality in the boot goes, it's okay back here and the opening aperture's all right, but compared to a lot of the competition, this thing comes lower down the field in terms of boot space. Even a Honda Accord has a bigger boot than one of these. Also, the rear seats don't fold down. Why, Mitsubishi? Now listen, we need to say a massive thank you for watching this video and hopefully more of our content. And if you'd like to help us make more free car videos for you, all you've got to do is give that subscribe button a little bit of a jibbity jab. Honestly, it helps us more than you know, and we'd be so appreciative. But if you'd really like to help both us and you out, why not join our membership program for even more ReDriven perks? The link for that is also down below. Anyway, speaking of perks, you know where these things blow their competition away? It's just in how sorted they feel to drive. I mean, even 20 years on, and in this one with over 240,000 Ks on it, the ride and handling are seriously impressive. Now, a lot of this has to do with the fact that these were really one of the only Australian-made cars that had a single piece of stamped sheet metal for the sides of the cars. This maximizes the rigidity of the entire body shell, and that's one of the big reasons that it just feels so sorted even now. And also, even though back in the day these were categorized as a large family car, compared to cars these days, this is slightly smaller than the current Mercedes-Benz C-Class. So when it comes to dealing with traffic or parking it, it's, yeah, not too bad. The slightly thinner pillars all around probably also help with external visibility. Maybe not so great for safety, but we're just going to ignore that for now. And look, aside from the turning circle being a complete joke, the rest of the car in terms of driving is just so enjoyable. I'll go as far as saying it feels like driving a really well-sorted European car. But here's a question for you. Can these suffer from the same mechanical and reliability concerns of European cars? Or is this thing just going to exude typical Japanese reliability? I can't answer those questions because I'm not a qualified mechanic. Luckily, Jim is.
Now these are aging now, and if it hasn't had a good service history, they are going to need some work. All the coolant hoses are all probably going to be rock hard by now, and the steel coolant outlets, especially the ones on the throttle body, they are most likely corroded inside those rock hard hoses, so be very careful when you're changing them. Also, there's a coolant pipe that runs up the valley of the V6 off the back of the water pump. It's got a few outlets on it as well, and it is a steel pipe, and chances are it's going to be rusty as well. The O-ring fittings on the end of it and the small outlets, be very careful there because rust is a big issue with those. Now, oil consumption is a bit of an issue on these, and they were always known for leaking valve stem seals. If you've ever sat behind one at a set of traffic lights, put your vent on recirc because you'd be sucking in a whole bunch of smoke as soon as they drive off. Now, replacing the valve stem seals can often help, but a lot of the times the valve guides are worn as well, so you can go to great expense and trouble of putting new valve stem seals on, and it might not fix it for very long, unfortunately. The hydraulic lifters on these can also get a bit rattly. You can still buy new ones, but most people just put up with it, to be honest. These things have a timing belt which is due every 100,000 kilometres or 5 years, and that timing belt also drives the water pump, which you would do at the same time. Now, the spark plugs are also due at 100,000 kilometres on these. Now, fun fact, to change the spark plugs you need to take the inlet manifold off. Now, while that inlet manifold is off, it's a good idea to do the valve cover gaskets as well because they will be leaking. It's a very common problem. So do the valve cover gaskets, do the spark plugs, do the timing belt, do it all at the same time, and you'll have years of happy motoring. But if you are working on these, be very careful. You will definitely have very brittle electrical connections. All the plastics are going to be brittle and stuff is just likely to break. Ask me how I know. Now, the transmissions in these are not unreliable. The most common complaint is just a shudder on takeoff. Now, that's often caused by a torque converter or torque converter clutch issue. Some owners find that if they change the oil and use additives, that can improve it for a while, but it often comes back. Now, if it's bad enough, you're actually likely to have to pull the gearbox apart and repair it. You can still get parts for them, but they're not cheap.
Now look, I know we've been alluding to just how cheap these are through this entire video, but guess how much these are going for on the Aussie used market right now? The very cheapest ones are going for about a case of beer. For something that's actually registered and works, about $1,000 is the cheapest. At the top end of the spectrum, excluding the ultra rare TMR 380 models, mint condition examples top out at around about 13,000 bucks. But the thing is, the majority on the used market sort of hover between $3,000 and $6,000. That is so much car for the money. Think about it. Replacing a Volkswagen water pump can often cost way more than that. Seriously though, if you had no idea what a 380 was in the first place and you just covered up the badges and then went for a drive and someone said to you, this is about a $20,000 car, yeah, you'd believe it. There are so many cars on the used market asking thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars more than these that simply cannot match the 380 for how it feels to drive and for how enjoyable it is to live with, as long as you don't need certain spare parts. And unfortunately, that's the kicker with these. If you're the sort of person that doesn't enjoy a solid DIY project, or you don't want to spend hours of your life trawling the interwebs for 380 specific parts, this is not the car for you. But if you do love to tinker and you want to connect with like-minded automotive enthusiasts and you want one of the best value for money used cars on the market, yeah, get a 380. Otherwise, just get one of these.
Now, these are aging now. And I've got nothing.
Now, a lot of this was due to manufacturers having to use more environmentally friendly processes at the time, but you plane.
On these, be very careful of brittle electrical
collectors. They're like connectors.